are noticing, the trends to remote work as much as possible in the fields where that's a possibility. Really interested in kind of getting your perspective on the human aspect of this, right? We know that one of the big motivators for people wanting to go back to a workplace is they're missing that face-to-face interaction. So really interested to get your perspective on that, Mark, about what's kind of driving that piece.
Absolutely, and thanks, Carol. And I think I'd actually sort of say, to set the stage for commenting on why are people from their point of view today hungering to go back to work, I think it's worthwhile to actually step back and take stock of the magnitude of change that we've just seen happen with regards to remote work. I mean, it was, not long ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, the topic of remote work and who should be enabled to do remote work and what work can be done remotely was radically different than the reality that people understand today. I mean,
right.
in January, if you were a remote work advocate or evangelist, you were trying to chip away at an establishment that still broadly was based upon a very conservative principle of presenteeism. The only place that work can effectively happen is at the office. The only place where I can trust an employee to do her or his work is if I can see them in the office. And then other well-intentioned concepts like, our culture is important as a company, our brand is important as a company, and those things can't possibly exist or be nurtured if the company isn't all together. Those were strongly held beliefs only 6 months ago. And of course, today, something intervened as a massive change agent, which is this invisible enemy of a pandemic. And it didn't give any leadership or employees, managers or employees were deprived of the ability to decide whether or not they wanted to remote work. We, of course, were thrust into that context.
Yes, yes.
And from that happening, some very interesting things have occurred. A great many employees who have been, so in fact, amongst all of us who have been working from home, I'd argue that there are sort of three cohort groups that are starting to take shape. There is most definitely a community of individuals who have been working at home, who have had a somewhat eye-opening experience and realized, wow, A, I've been able to do my work, and B, this working from home environment and the other aspects that go with it, the avoidance of a commute, et cetera, has actually been very positive. It's been net positive for me. And if allowed, I am going to want to emigrate. I'm going to want to persist in this way. It has worked for me. Mm-hmm. In addition, the other key sort of demonstrated learning has been a generation or a cohort of managers who have been forced to take their hands off of control and say, yes, of course you have to work at home, Carol, has observed that, Mark and Carol have been able to do their work.
Right.
And so there's been a radically accelerated advance in terms of management's perspective on what can happen remotely. So you got the cohort group that's happy. Mm-hmm. I think to your question, who wants to come back and what for, that relates to a second cohort group amongst those of us who've all been working home, who are mostly happy. Meaning, yes, they've been getting work done. They've had to, we've all had to. But the mostly happy are finding, yeah, you know what? Home is proving to be a very viable place for me to do work. Maybe I did a little bit of it at home 1 day a week in the past. I'm having to do 5 days a week now. I actually think that my adaptation, my behavior change is curing in now, it's baking in. I envision I'm going to want to spend 2, 3, 4 days a week, if not all 5, or for the mostly happy, it's 2, 3, or 4. I am still going to periodically or episodically want or need to be back with others. And this gets to the heart of your question. So what are we seeing? What are the things that are prompting people to either need to be back with others or want to be? Let's break into those two branches. Mm-hmm. On the need front, there certainly is some work that is implicitly collaborative.
Yeah.
That enjoys the experiential aspects of being in the same room. Whether that is something so literal as a brainstorm session with Post-it notes and whiteboards, right? Which
Love that. We do that all the time. Yeah.
yeah, you guys as consultants and thought leaders, you know that like that modality still struggles to be implemented in a digital context. Although there are some, there are some great collaborative tools that are trying to emulate those very concepts. There still is something in terms of efficiency of collaboration, material interaction that hungers for an in-person context. In addition, and other sort of flavor of collaboration that sort of wants interaction in person at times is client interaction or partner interaction, right? There are certain exchanges, negotiations and the like that, hey, they've been happening over Zoom for the last 12 weeks, but they too want that breaking of the bread, that negotiation, customer interface. Those things want to be in a human context. So yeah. those are I'd say need-driven ones, where the work typology, the work construct, is implicitly collaborative in nature, multi-party, and where it prefers, where it has productivity benefits of being together. The other piece, the I want to come back, I think is a softer one, and it's still a bit murkier. It's real, we need to honor it, but it is the I want to be back amongst my community of colleagues for, again, the softer side. I want to be back amongst my company and my brand and my colleagues. I want to sort of forge some of those experiences. It goes to my, in the hierarchy of my personal needs, it goes to my need for interaction and for a feeling of connection with you two, for example. And so that the work that I might do when I'm back at the office may not be implicitly collaborative, but I want to be back amongst others.
Mm-hmm. Getting then to the practical side of things, we were seeing in your report and other places as well, what are the logistics that we're going to have to be, maneuvering with in this new world, the cleanliness factor, the social distancing factor, the end of the open plan workspace, for example. What are you kind of seeing as the specifics of those practical concerns?
Well, I'll break that into sort of a more tactical answer, mm-hmm. And then a more strategic one. And I think they're both important. More tactically, if the question is what has to be done for people to come back to the office, we can take a very tactical response to that. And there are some fairly obvious things like these environment, health and safety protocols, both in the user behaviors and the physical environments, need to be implemented, auditable, enforceable. Those things have to happen. And look, the good news is most employers most if not all large employers have had many weeks now to aggressively mobilize on building their back to the office protocols, their playbooks. And there's ample documentation online about the various sort of aspects of those environments. But broadly speaking, they involve readying the physical environments to be safer in the context of a still persistent epidemic, right? And so density levels are being dropped radically. In the Bay Area where we all sort of reside, the norms on reentry are going to be anticipating de-densifying the offices, constricting their capacities by as much as 90%.
Wow.
In addition, there are sort of structural modifications that are being made that sort of go along with that principle of de-densification. So increasing the spacing between people within the environments, preparing protocols for other physical choke points that bring people into proximity. I mean, the elevators, the lifts in buildings are an enormous logistical challenge and a choke point, given the fact that they were designed to pack people in literally shoulder to shoulder, and that's simply not tenable at the present time. So you've got physical distancing and overall density level precautions that are being taken. You also have a whole layer of efforts that are being undertaken to try to move toward a more touchless environment. And that relates to all aspects of both how I access the building. I mean, am I grabbing a doorknob or does it open automatically? Am I pushing buttons on the elevator or is it auto routed? If I'm a guest at an environment, am I picking up a pen and signing a badge, or is it a touchless experience to capture my identity? When I'm inside of the environment and I'm using that meeting room with a whiteboard, am I bringing my own whiteboard markers, or are they shared for me? If it's a meeting room that was shared the prior hour, has it been cleaned before I come in? If I'm sitting down at a workstation that might be shared with other employees, are there precautions being taken either to clean it or to ensure that it was left idle for sufficient time for any contagions to die off? These are all of the sort of physical touch related dimensions, and on and on. So if you're an employer who owns or leases its own workplace as a home, or if you're a workspace as a service operator, co-working operator, et cetera, broadly speaking, you've mobilized, are mobilizing on all those dimensions. That's the tactical response. That's simply making it safe and or safer, right? And in perception and reality for the users of space. And we could talk more and more about other aspects of safety, health. There's the air quality, et cetera. But there's a lot to be done there.